someone who has worked in the leadership shoes, would I say, for quite a while, from your early years, which I'm privy to know about, which, in school you held some leadership roles, and then even moving to public service and even into the community development space, you also held leadership roles. What would you say has been, what experience, I mean, you've worked in different areas, what experience would you say has really shaped the way you view leadership right now?
First of all, thank you for bringing that up. I somehow found myself assuming leadership role, on the basis of the trust people had in me that I could do what they expected somebody to do. I didn't just consciously, set out to seek to be provided leadership role. Somehow it was thrusted upon me. All right. I do not know why. I do not know why they so. And it all started from even while I was in the primary school, somehow my peers had a way of deferring to me.
Okay.
They had a way of saying, okay, on this matter, let's hear your opinion. And for me, when you find yourself in that kind of situation where people defer and prefer to hear from you and seem to accept your opinion or your perspective as a guide to them, know that there is something you're offering.
Okay.
And do not take it for granted. For me, it's again a clear testimony to the fact that there is something of value in what we are doing which makes people to prefer what your position is on the matter.
Yeah.
And when that begins to happen, know that people expect so much from you. Know also that you have a responsibility not to disappoint them. Know also that you are already providing service.
Okay.
Because when people seek your opinion and accept it, that's a form of service. That's a form of service. Know also that you are gradually evolving into a role model. Because there are people that now look up to you. They see what you do, looking different, which they want to emulate. And it all started from my interaction with my peers, right from the village level, typical village level where I was born. Because I found myself influencing my peers quite a lot. Influencing them, whether it was negatively or positively, that was not what I was thinking about, but they had a way of
that influence.
Yes, And even amongst those slightly older than me, I found out that they did not take any decision without wanting to hear from me. And as I speak to you today, the situation has really never changed. There are people far, far, far older than me, old enough to be my parents. There's hardly any decision, honestly speaking, about the community that is to be taken that my opinion is not sought. And I've kept wondering. For me, it's a rare privilege. It's something I thank God for. But the fact is not lost on me that it is also a function of trust. And if it's a function of trust, I have a responsibility to ensure that I'm always relied upon by not disappointing them. So whatever it is that I'm saying, whatever I'm doing, I must never forget that somebody expects a certain standard from me. All right? So that's the way it has evolved for me.
How has it influenced your leadership approach? I think you mentioned trust.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
You is also there. Integrity is also there. All right, sacrifice is also there. Empathy is also there. Because if you're a leader, these are attributes that are very, very central. You can't be a successful leader when you don't empathize. And that is what brings in the issue of emotional intelligence. You cannot have people who look up to you without you also bothering to know their state of mind, what is happening to them, empathizing with them, not being quick at being judgmental. Right? And as a leader, you don't just get interested in finding faults. You must ask, why is that person behaving that way? Why is that person failing, even in the task that you are giving the person? Because you may need to peep into somebody's situation. You may never know what is happening. All right? And that's why it's important to be a good listener as a leader. You listen, hear out somebody, especially if the faults are not things that are common with that person. All right? You must know there must be something wrong. So that's why, as a leader, you must empathize. All right? Emotional intelligence must be central in your relationship with whoever you are providing leadership or mentorship for. All right? And so I found myself again in my secondary school being trusted with the responsibility to be a house prefect. All right? Now, what that meant to me was that I was expected to be disciplined. I was expected not to break the rules, to understand the rules laid down in the school much better than those that I was providing leadership for. As a house prefect, I needed to ensure that the house was kept clean. I needed to ensure that if it was prep time, all right, I needed to ensure that nobody was in the hostel, in the dormitory, everybody was in the classroom. If it was CISR time, I needed to ensure that every student was in bed for that period, 1 hour CISR. If it was time for for games, all right, you needed to lead your house, the students in your house for games. If it was weekends on which we had what was always referred to as inspection weekends, Saturdays, where the principal led a team of teachers and housemasters from dormitory to dormitory inspecting to score the most clean house. The cleanest house was awarded, and it was publicly done during the assembly. There was a specific day set aside for such, recognition. And you didn't want your dormitory to come last, And so you had all this responsibility. And you also had the added responsibility of liaising between the students in your house and the housemaster, right? Who usually was a teacher in the school. So you had the house prefect and you had the housemaster. So you also needed to be a team player in order to, so you had to think of how to motivate the students in your dormitory to be able to help you succeed even as a house prefect. So it was not about you. You were definitely bound to fail if you thought that you could elevate yourself to a higher pedestal, all right, ruling over other students in the dormitory. No. You needed to work as a team to motivate them to feel the need and the desire to work so hard so that your dormitory will always come first in sports competition, in cleanliness, in whatever the administration wanted to score each house on. So I found myself cultivating these attributes and then making them, internalizing them, and then correcting myself. And it also required listening, because if you did not listen, you possibly would not know the things you are also doing wrong. Okay? Because as a leader, you are not perfect. All right? There will be lapses, and you certainly must listen to be able to accept correction. You cannot always be wrong. There may be certain things out of your zeal to succeed that you may be doing wrong. Right? So I learned all of this. And then at the community level, as a youth leader of my community, Cultural Development Association, I enabled me to know every nook and cranny of my community because meetings were rotationally held each month. All right, moving from one community to another, one village to another, holding these meetings. All right, and it also enabled me to understand human behavior because you cannot be a leader of a people. All right, and these people are of different, orientations and behaviors. All right, and providing leadership for such a multiple, you are dealing with diversity. And as early as that was, it helped me to begin to understand that today, as the national president of my community development association, those I provided leadership for when I was young. Some of them are still alive, and they are still under me today. That I'm the national president of my community development association, and there are projects I've had to initiate that they have given me a second chance to be the national president of the same community development association I have provided leadership for over 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. Underlines the fact that there is trust. That they trusted me over 40 years ago. Today they still trust me, and that is why I'm still a leader. Meaning that there certainly must be something that I'm doing right. Otherwise, nobody would have thought of me 30 years after, 40 years. It would have been a situation, it would have been the story of good riddance to bad rubbish. But that is not the case. It is, can we have more of you? That is the statement. Can we have more of you? Can we continue to have you? And of course, this second coming has provided me an opportunity to inject something new. Something new, something more current, all right, because of the emerging challenges that we are also facing as a community. We have a project that we are driving today. Before I assumed the leadership, I had come up with a model as part of my contribution to my community. I didn't know that model I was going to end up the person presiding over its implementation. All right. I had gotten an architect friend of mine who came up with a model of community development, all right, for my community, something like a master plan. And that master plan is all encompassing. It's about human capital development, it's about fiscal development, it's about so many things. And there are key activities that we have prioritized all this thing at a community stakeholder engagement. So it was not my decision to sit down and prioritize them. That I deliberately, on assumption of duty, brought together stakeholders within the community. That so we can agree which are the priority activities that we need to embark on and commence implementation. Okay. And they all agree. Let the first thing be, can we come up with the history of our people? Because he who does not know where he is coming from will certainly not know where they are headed. And so the people need to know who they are. And if you do not know who you are, somebody else will define you the way the person perceives you. We do not want anybody to define for us who we are, because we know who we are. So we must tell our own story. We must tell our own history. Not like in those days when the colonial historians brought our own history and told us that Mogopa founded River Niger, as if villagers, indigenous people, did not know the existence of that river. But that's colonial, that's history from the colonialist perspective. That is what has informed the decision for us to make that a priority project. We've driven it so far, it's almost at its concluding point. All right. We've mobilized resources that resources that have enabled us to get to where we are today. And soon, we hope to publish and have a public presentation of that history that tells our story in order to avoid distortions. All right. It is also about ensuring that the younger ones that do not know who they are actually get to know who they are. Because take away your history, you've lost your identity. with respect to, do you have a national attire? What are your national colors as a people? What do you use to categorize yourself? That by merely looking at people know that this is who you are. We've come up with that. And I came up with these ideas and presented them for debate. They were debated robustly by the same community. Alright? And they all agreed. This are the modifications. Can we tweak here? Can we tweak here? Can we touch this color? Can we do this? And each feature that is in that national attire has meaning that must be known by everybody. So they've taken ownership of that. Alright? And so today we have a national attire by which if the entire community is known. Alright? That is just it. I've looked at the constitution that I came to inherit with lots of lacunas, lots of deficiencies. A constitution that does not speak to the realities that we have today, structurally and even in content. I have taken time to go through that. Alright? Amend it, injected quite a number of it. For me, what we now have is something that you may want to describe as a new constitution. But it's still in the process. So what I now intend to do is to put it out there again to every stakeholder to look at, make their inputs and their inputs, delete expunge whatever they think is not acceptable. Alright? And then at the end of the day, when the collective accept that this reflects who they are, then it becomes the people's constitution. That is the stage at which we are. We are at the stage, it's now with a printer that will produce a dummy and will make it a public listing for debate. Just like the kind of thing that Nigerians are asking to be done to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because as far as Nigerians are concerned, the Constitution was given to us by the military. Nigerians didn't have the liberty to make it, because that's why there are voices today that are advocating that there is a need for us to take a second look at our Constitution instead of a piecemeal amendment that the National Assembly is embarking on. So these are some of the things.
So these are the things that have shaped your leadership approach. I like this fact that, you said something about knowing your history, which I feel like is very important. And you noted that, if you don't know your history, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know where you're coming from, it's easy for someone else to define who you are. So I feel like that's also an important takeaway from also what you have said of knowing your origin, knowing your roots, and knowing yourself. And you also said one thing that's also shaped your leadership journey in terms of like listening, being a good listener. I feel like lots of us hear, but we don't listen. And I feel like that's something I've had to consciously bring myself to a number of times, because I always felt, okay, a certain number of people have had to point it out to me, like, these are the loopholes. And I'm like, I realized that the reason why I was having that experience was because I was hearing, but I wasn't listening to what the person was saying. So I think that is very important also, as you have noted, in leadership in terms of shaping how you approach, and also the importance of trust in leadership, because I feel like people follow you and your vision as a person, right? So I feel like building that trust, if there's no trust, they won't definitely follow you. So those are extracts I think that people should also note in terms of this journey. So that brings me to my next question. You have worked in the public service for 10 years, right, or more? Much more.
Actually, I served in the public service for 35 years.
35 years, okay. Plus the 9 years previously, okay.
Added up.
Yeah, so 35 years in public service, that's a lot of experience to, know the nooks and crannies. What has so you understand the nature of like governance, public service work in Nigeria to a vast degree of extent. What has your experience in public service, shown you or taught you in terms of accountability and service in leadership? And also, what are some notable gaps that you have noticed in our leadership system currently in Nigeria, and what are some suggestions you think we can bridge that gap? So the first question is, what has your experience taught you in terms of accountability
not submit yourself to interrogation as a leader, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. That can destroy the trust that people have in you. Because what that suggests is that there is something you are hiding. That's number one. So you must be accountable. You are a leader not to yourself. You are leading a people. And whoever is a leader must appreciate the fact that he is not an emperor. You are a leader because some people have allowed you to lead them. So, you must be answerable to somebody. You cannot be Alpha and Omega. And if you fail to be answerable to somebody, then you've lost it. You might just be running the race of a Lone Ranger, thinking that you have a support base. In the public service, and when I'm talking of the public service, I do not intend to be restrictive to just the civil service. So this is inclusive of political office holders, whether elected or appointed. They are serving the public. That is one thing that is in short supply: accountability, transparency. And where you don't have accountability and transparency, it impinges on your integrity. Why must you be hiding the facts? Why must you be exclusive of other people? Why? If there is nothing, there is no skeleton in your cupboard. So key to successful leadership is accountability, transparency, and then the aspect that has to do with good listenership. You must be an active listener. I'm happy that you gave the example of you would listen to what somebody was saying without necessarily listening to the person. Alright? And that's why the other aspect that is very important is active. It's called active listening. So you are not just hearing me, but you are indeed listening. And the way to distinguish the two is that all along from the start of this conversation, you have had cause to interject and to ask follow-up questions. It would not have been possible for you to ask those follow-up questions that bore relevance to what I had previously said if you were not listening actively. If you were simply hearing without listening, it would not have been possible to sustain this conversation. Alright. So what you've been doing is active listening, which is another important attribute that must manifest, that must define who a leader is. Nothing encourages a follower, like when a follower comes to explain something, or with concerns, with challenges, and that follower's voice is ignored. It completely deflates you. It diminishes you. It makes you feel less than who you are. When I refuse to listen to you. So as a leader, if I want to motivate those I'm working with and want to sustain the spirit of teamwork, I must listen attentively. I must be humble. I must be accessible. A good number of our leaders are not accessible. They make themselves accessible only to the extent that they can harvest votes from you. And it's a seasonal thing. Somebody who is elected for 4 years is no longer accessible once he assumes office until another election cycle. And he comes to remind you he needs your votes. So that is the meeting point. So his perception of you and what you mean to him is that you are a producer of votes. That is what brings it back to you. To take votes that will guarantee his return to office. After that, there is opportunity to pour out your frustrations, to share what your aspirations are, to even share with him whether he's doing well, whether he's even meeting those promises. He needs to be reminded of the promises he made when he was looking for the vote. But not many leaders understand that that is what leadership is about. And so it's not every public officer who finds himself in leadership role today is a statesman. Not every politician is a leader. That is just a clear distinction. It's not every politician or public office holder that you can rightly ascribe the role of a good leader. No. A good leader is the one that empathizes. A good leader is the one that is interested in your tomorrow. A good leader is the one that hears and wants to change your situation. A good leader is the one that thinks less of self, but thinks more of tomorrow. A good leader is the one that thinks of generations to come. A good leader is not the one that thinks of what can I use Sarah for today to benefit, and not what is Sarah's problem and how can I address Sarah's problem. There is a distinction, and that is the problem we have in our leadership situation today in this country. All right. Even within the context of the working space, there are those today who are in leadership positions hardly ever want to think about, is the work environment conducive enough to bring out the best in myself? Am I that kind of a leader that is only interested in why have you not come to work? Why have you come late today? Without asking, why is he coming or she coming late today? Is there anything I can do to make the job easier for her? Am I that kind of a leader that is more interested in punitive measures because you've not met your targets? Why am I not asking as a leader, why has she not met her targets? Is it her fault or is it my fault? Are there certain things I need to do right to make it easier for her to meet her target? These are the questions. Because the reason why the targets have not been met or why she's not at her optimum might just be me, that I'm the person, I'm the problem. Because I've not created the work environment conducive enough to bring out the best. Yes, I may not be, the right thing may not be to continue to entertain excuses. Alright? But as it's also important to always look at the two sides of the coin, or of the coin. You are expected as a program officer of this organization to meet targets, to do what you are doing. Assuming, after scheduling this conversation, and we agreed on 11 o'clock, and you came here and there was no power. There was no power. It's not within your power to provide electricity here. Assuming you came, and then you didn't have these gadgets, how does that become your fault? But whether you like it or not, that would have affected your meeting your deadlines and meeting your tasks done. And so it becomes somebody else's responsibility to put the necessary tools you need, the environment, for you to perform. Alright? So it takes two to tango. Now, what manner of leader are you? Are you that leader that creates the environment for your followers to achieve targets? At the end of the day, if you successfully do that as a leader, you would have ended up taking the credit after all. Because the credit comes to you as a leader. The person who did the job is faceless, particularly in the public service. That is why even when it's opportunity, signing a letter, it is for. You write a speech for your boss, nobody sees you, nobody knows the author. It's a fantastic speech. It is the boss that stands in the public, in front of the cameras, and delivers a fantastic platform. If it's a paper you prepared for your boss, for a workshop, a conference, you wouldn't be there. If he delivers it beautifully, the content fantastic, nobody knows. leader must not take for granted the emotional intelligence of the team he's working with. Is the worker, is your subordinate in the right frame of mind? If not, why not? Because if I'm not interested in your happiness at home, which might be the reason why your output is low in the office, then I'm missing the point. And that is why smart leaders go out of the way to be interested in what is happening to my team, even outside the office space. I'm interested in your welfare. I know when you are down, I know when you are up. What can I do to motivate you? What about your skills? I hired you at point A. You had ABC skills. But there are new challenges that keep emerging in the office space. Am I developing your capacity beyond where you were when I engage you? Am I giving you the opportunity to grow yourself in terms of competence so that you are also able to meet the emerging challenges at the place of work that this organization could be confronted with? Or am I that person that expects so much from you but don't think about how to grow your capacity every day? Because capacity building must be continuous. Right? Skill acquisition, improvement, and continuous learning must be an integral and total part of the work process. Right? Are you that kind of a leader? The truth of the matter is that there are organizations you go to, from my experience working in the public service, that there is no, in some organizations, there is no budget for staff training. So how do you improve that is the performance of that institution when there is no budget for continuous staff training? And even when you have, those who benefit from it are those at the highest level. Those who are actually the foot soldiers, who do the job. Nobody cares. Unless the person on his own has a strong desire and is prepared to use his or her own resources to develop himself or herself. Because you're already thinking beyond that organization. You want to market yourself. Because we are operating in a marketplace of competitive skills. So if you do not go out of your way, invest your resources into developing, growing yourself, you are likely to mark time there. And others will come out and overtake you. You make yourself less marketable. Alright? And that's why you find in some organizations today in the public sector, you find out that there is so much manpower mobility. People exit organizations at the slightest opportunity because rather than growing, they appear to be retrogressing. Right? So these are and this is placed on the doorstep of leadership. Right? What is your due? What is your due, or what is due your subordinates? Do you give them? Or you corner everything to yourself? You want your subordinates to perform, you want targets met, and then you are dispatching Esther to go to Guagualada, you are dispatching Esther to go to Kaduna without providing the means by which she will go. How does that work? In some sectors today, these things happen. In the public service. Right? There are officers today that possibly don't even have desks and chairs. You do not do any needs assessment in order to strategically know the kind of people that you bring in. Do you bring in new hands into the organization on the basis of needs assessment, needs gaps? Some leaders don't do. So when you decide to place political considerations over and above such necessary considerations such as needs assessment, engaging the appropriate, you kill the institution. You are killing the institution. The institution does not grow. And the growth of an institution is measured on the basis of its performance. And its performance is a product of the capabilities of the people that drive that institution. And it still bounces back to who the leader is, because he's the visionary. Alright? So when you have a leader that has no vision, what strategies will you expect from that kind of leader to meet corporate goals? You're going to have a problem. You're going to have gaps existing. Alright? But you have a leader with ideas, and a leader that is prepared to build his workforce, understanding very well that his success is closely tied to the emotional state, the psychological state of the workforce. That leader will be an achiever. And he's going to have an institution that is bubbling, that is growing by the day, that is meeting deadlines, that is prospering. And if that institution provides service to customers, you're more likely to have customer satisfaction. Solely on account of that kind of relation. But it's a leader that likes lying in his pockets, the resources are available, then you're going to run into trouble. Such a leader does not inspire the confidence of those that look up to such a leadership. At the community level, the same principle applies. So it's not just about public service. At whichever level you find yourself as a leader, we have universal principles that must be adhered to by leaders. Where trust is lost, you've lost it all. Just a few weeks ago, I got a call. A politician had fertilizer for. I got the call, and the call said there were fertilizer bags by a politician for our community. And I asked, how many bags? They said 5 bags. The next question I asked, for how many people in the community? Was the next question. We are not talking of the executive members of the community, we are talking of community. And I said that was a seed of discord that politician was trying to plant in the community. So who was going to, how many cups were members of the community, each member was going to have? And to what effect? I don't know if you get the point.
Yeah.
Now, that politician set out to score a cheap political goal. It will be recorded that he brought fertilizer. You get the point? And he gave fertilizer to the community. And because the majority members of that community may not have the real information, what may filter to them is that so-and-so brought fertilizer. And as the president of my community organization, I saw the implications and I saw the danger in it. If I did not handle the situation carefully and smartly, my name was at stake. So I asked the contact person, who I understand is one of his aides, tell me, how do you intend 5 bags of fertilizer? And it's not even the giant size bags. I was later made to understand. How do you want the distribution to be done? And he said, no. The 5 bags were not meant for every member of the community. I said, for whom were they meant? He said they were meant for the executive members of the community development association. I said, that notwithstanding, in my community development association, we have up to 14 executive members. And here you have 5 bags. How do you want us to share this? I still ask. Secondly, not all of them reside in Kabaja. I reside in Abuja. My secretary, the secretary to the Community Development Association, resides at Inugu. And then you have some residing in Kaduna, Zaria, Jos. And we have executive members of branches. So if you say executive member, do you mean the national executive or inclusive of the branch executive? I ask all this question. Because I needed a formula, and I needed them to be specific and to also discover the inadequacies of people in what they had done. The response was simply that it was the executive, presumably the national executive. I said, okay. So I called my secretary, called the financial secretary, and I said, this is what has come. And the information I have is that it's the executive. How do we share without putting our reputation in the line. Nobody could provide me an answer. And I said, okay, this is my answer to you. Get the public relations officer who is based in Kenya and the vice president. Let them go and collect the 5 bags. They did. And I asked, can I have the monetary value of each bag? They got the monetary value for me. And I said, okay, none of us, the executive members, will take a grain of the fertilizer. And since the distribution will create a problem, get potential buyers of the 5 bags, preferably from the community, any member of the community. Publicize it. Who wishes to buy, let the person pay the money based on the market value. And if the buyer is a community member, we grant such a buyer discount. I was told the market value was 30,000. I said, knock off 4,000. Let it be 26,000 for anybody from within the association willing to buy. The money, the proceeds realized from the sales, pay into the association's account. That money goes to the association. So none of us that benefits directly as executive members, but we need the money as an association because we have projects and we are in dire need of money. So nobody can trace that fertilizer or the money to any individual member of the executive. Alright, because the money realized from the sale has been paid into the association's money account. That was the decision that was taken. Reputation is at the center of it. So that even if those ill-informed or some people who may wish to be mischievous decide to say, we learned a politician brought fertilizer, what happened to it, and so on and so forth. First of all, the expression was that it was not meant for the generality. It was meant for the EXCO. But even though it was meant for the EXCO, we decided not to benefit directly from it. To sell it, get money, pay into the association's account for the projects meant to benefit the entire community. So nobody can trace one kobo of that to any one of us. So this is about being sensitive. It's also about being selfless. It's about making sacrifice. Not so much because none of us needed fertilizer for our farms, but there comes a time that you have to make a sacrifice for the sake of the community, of the collective, for the sake of those you are providing leadership. So if you decide to make yourself the first consideration, always you. Again, you are bound to lose the trust of those you are providing leadership. So this is about what happens at the community level, at the level of governance, public service, whether as a politician or a career civil servant. There are universal principles of leadership that a leader must at all times adhere to because you want to inspire confidence, you want to be trusted, you want your integrity to be intact. Once you've lost all of this, you've lost followership. And a leader ceases to be a leader when he has no followership. It means you are a lone ranger. And that is what happens often with political office holders, top government functionaries, who after quitting office can hardly ever assemble up to 20 people to listen to them. Because that is when people remind you, when you were in leadership, how did you take care of us? It was you, it was all about you and you alone. And that is why also it's it's so obvious that when some people retire from office, or after they have served out, or there's a change of guard and they leave particular office, they no longer have confidence to even pay a visit to their previous place of work because of the hostile reception they are likely to receive. Why still visiting them, still identifying with them, still wanting to do one thing or the other for them. It all depends on what kind of leadership you provided. So, relationship beyond your place of work and beyond your leadership time frame is normally determined by the kind of leadership you provided. And the leadership you provided becomes the reference point for every other person. And whether others will speak positively about you or not, the people you lead write your scorecard for you. They are actually the people who are your referees. When you were there, you were a referee to many people. But the day you leave, they become your referees. Writing your own writing about you to other people. So the choice is yours.